Hey everyone, and welcome back. We've had a ton of requests to deep dive into Starbucks,
Oh yeah, and
and
definitely a popular one.
it's fascinating, right?
It is.
So today we're diving into the world of Starbucks, and let me tell you, you guys sent us a lot on this one.
Yeah, a lot of info.
I mean, talk about a Wikipedia rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We're about to unpack the journey of this coffee giant from, a single shop in Seattle to a global phenomenon. How do they do it? What does Starbucks' journey tell us about, well, about business and culture and maybe even ourselves? I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, me too. It's a story full of, well, twists and innovations and yes, even some controversies.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
To really get this journey, I think we need to start back in 1971
Okay.
at Pike Place Market, where it all began.
Pike Place Market, it's interesting because the founders, Baldwin, Siegel, and Boker, they weren't initially aiming to be, a coffee house empire.
Really?
Yeah, their original Starbucks was all about high quality coffee beans, right? And equipment.
Wow.
Like imagine walking into a Starbucks, no lattes,
Oh, wow.
no frappuccinos,
Wow.
just the aroma of freshly roasted beans.
I can barely even picture it.
I know, right? It's almost like a haven for just like the hardcore coffee enthusiast.
I know, before latte art was even a thing.
Exactly. And speaking of things you might not picture, did you know the name Starbucks has a surprising literary connection?
Oh, yeah, I think I read something about that. It wasn't their first choice, right?
No, not at all.
Okay.
They wanted a name starting with Saint. They thought it sounded powerful.
Okay.
They even considered Starbo.
Starbo.
Yeah, after a mining town.
Oh, wow.
But thankfully, they thought better of it.
Thank goodness for that. So how did they land on Starbucks?
It was serendipity, really.
Oh, okay.
Starbo reminded them of Starbuck, who was the first mate in Moby Dick.
Wow.
Talk about a marketing.
That's a good one.
I mean, you can't deny it's a pretty good story to tell.
Right. Especially for a brand that's all about, the experience.
Exactly.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing from there, was it?
Not exactly.
This is where Howard Schultz enters the picture and Starbucks undergoes a major transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. In the 1980s,
See?
Schultz, who was then the director of marketing, he envisioned this idea of transforming Starbucks from just a bean retailer to a full-blown coffeehouse experience.
Right.
And this is revolutionary because you got to remember, this is before coffee shops were on every corner.
Total game changer.
Exactly.
It's amazing how that shift happened so quickly, right?
So-
From niche to mainstream.
Niche to mainstream,
Yeah, and then Schultz takes the helm in 1987,
right?
and they embark on this period of just rapid expansion.
Yeah,
This is when Starbucks really starts its journey toward global domination.
world domination.
But as we'll see, that journey wasn't always pretty.
You're right. That's where things get interesting because, Starbucks expansion, it came with a steep learning curve,
Right.
especially when it came to different coffee cultures around the world.
I see.
Like, take their attempt to open a store in Beijing's Forbidden City, for example.
Oh, yeah. That was in 2000, right?
2000?
Right in the heart of China.
Imagine the clash, a symbol of American capitalism
Right.
within, a centuries-old imperial palace.
Right.
To many, it felt like, a total disregard for Chinese culture.
For sure.
And so Starbucks ultimately closed the store in 2007.
That's a pretty short lifespan for a Starbucks.
Yeah, it is.
Especially considering, their whole thing is rapid expansion.
Right.
Do you think this experience made them more cautious about, future ventures?
I think it definitely highlighted the importance of cultural sensitivity,
Right.
but it didn't stop them from encountering similar challenges elsewhere.
Like where?
Like Australia, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Australia, they already had like a really well-established coffee culture
Right.
with independent cafes, a real artisanal approach to coffee.
Okay.
Starbucks comes in with their, larger-than-life presence,
Yeah.
Americanized approach.
Yeah, which we've kind of seen doesn't always translate well.
Not always, no. It's a different vibe.
Different vibe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They faced criticism, for the standardized drinks,
Okay.
their pricing, even their cup sizes.
Really?
Yeah, it didn't resonate with the Aussie coffee lover.
Okay, so how did they adapt? Or did they?
They had to scale back.
Really?
They closed a significant number of stores in 2008.
Why?
They eventually found their footing,
Okay.
but they really had to adapt to local tastes,
Okay.
smaller sizes, focusing on quality over quantity, that kind of thing.
Right, so it's almost like this balancing act, right? trying to maintain this global brand identity,
Yeah.
but then also, like, cater to these local nuances.
It's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Can you even do that?
It makes you wonder if a company that's, becomes so synonymous with just, like, American-style coffee culture
Yeah.
can ever, like, truly win over a country like Australia.
Yeah. I mean, it's a challenge for
Yeah.
sure. And I think the Australian experience, it taught them valuable lessons, right?
Yeah.
About market research, adaptation,
Right.
really understanding where you're going.
Totally.
But speaking of adaptation, let's talk about Starbucks' innovative side,
Okay.
because they are known for constantly experimenting.
Oh, absolutely.
New drinks, new concepts.
Frappuccino.
The Frappuccino, exactly.
Oh, my gosh.
Which has practically become a cultural icon,
It really has.
like synonymous with the brand.
Oh, yeah.
But here's something many people don't know.
Okay.
Starbucks didn't actually invent the Frappuccino.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
They acquired the rights to the drink
Okay.
in the mid-90s
Okay.
when they bought a coffee chain called the Coffee Connection.
Okay.
So they saw a good idea, they took it, they put their own little spin on it,
Smart.
and turned it into,
A global sensation.
renewable sensation.
Talk about a recipe for success.
Right.
Like they really mastered that art of taking something good and then making it even bigger.
Exactly.
And it's not even just drinks, right? They've done some other ventures over the years that are kind of unexpected.
Yeah, like what? Like their music, the music industry?
Oh, the music.
Yeah.
Let's hear music.
Hear music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. They had their own record label.
Yeah.
They even signed Paul McCartney.
I know. It's amazing.
It's like they've woven themselves into so many aspects of our lives.
Totally.
It's not just that caffeine fix anymore.
Right. Right. It's more than that.
It's a lifestyle.
It's a whole thing.
Exactly.
But not all of their innovations have been as successful
Right. Which brings us to
as the Frappuccino.
the other side of this.
Exactly.
The controversy.
Because there's been a few
Yeah.
over the years.
Their rapid growth, their global reach, it's come at a cost.
Right.
They've faced criticism
Yeah.
for their environmental practices, their labor relations,
Yeah.
even accusations of racial bias.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
So let's try to take these, one by one. Let's start with, the environmental stuff.
Okay.
Because they've been called out for, their water usage,
Water usage.
those dipper wells. What's the story there?
Right. So back in 2008, it was reported that they were wasting millions of liters of water
What?
every day
Wow.
just from those dipper wells.
Okay.
And, the amount of water that it takes to, grow and produce coffee
It's got to be a lot. Yeah.
on a global scale, it's already a concern.
Right.
And this just added, fuel to the fire.
It really makes you think about, the hidden environmental costs
Right.
behind your cup of coffee.
Exactly.
It's a lot more than just, the cup, right?
It's not just the beans, it's the water.
Right.
It's the,
It's everything. So, okay, so they've obviously been called out for it. So what have they done? How have they responded?
So they've implemented water-saving measures.
Okay.
They're exploring ways to reduce their water footprint.
Okay. What about the cups, though?
Oh, the cups.
Because that's iconic cups.
I mean, come on, they're not exactly sustainable, are they?
No, it's been a struggle for them.
Yeah.
They've experimented with recycled materials.
Okay.
They've really encouraged reusable cups.
Okay.
But the sheer volume of cups they use daily,
It's got to be incredible.
it's a massive environmental challenge.
It's got to be, yeah, it's just even small changes, right?
Huge impact.
On such a massive scale.
Exactly.
Right. And speaking of impact, let's talk about another area where they faced some scrutiny. Their labor practices? Oh, yeah, the labor practices. That's a big one.
Because,
Long-standing tensions with labor unions.
Okay.
Accusations of union-busting tactics, calls for, better wages.
Yeah.
Better working conditions.
Right. It seems like that classic David versus Goliath.
Exactly.
How have they responded to these accusations?
They maintain that they respect their employees' right to organize.
Okay.
But, they also highlight the benefits they provide,
Okay.
the opportunities.
But the debate continues.
It's a key issue,
Yeah.
for sure,
Okay.
to watch going forward.
Right. And then, of course, there are the racial controversies.
Right.
That incident in Philadelphia in 2018,
Oh, yeah.
where 2 black men were arrested in a Starbucks
Just for being
So,
there, it was
yeah.
awful.
after the manager called the police on them, sparked outrage
Huge outrage.
and kind of forced the company to confront, I think, some hard truths about, implicit bias, and
Absolutely, yeah.
how do you even begin to address that?
It's a really tough one. And I think, it was a stark reminder that even a company that prides itself on diversity
Right, because they do.
and inclusion
Yeah.
can still, you know, fall victim to these deeply ingrained societal issues.
Right, it's almost like that unconscious bias,
Yeah, okay.
And it led to them, they closed, what, thousands of stores for racial bias training?
Yeah, for training.
But we know that, addressing systemic problems goes beyond just a day of training, right?
That's got to be more than that.
So how has Starbucks tried to address this, more broadly?
So, they've implemented initiatives to diversify
Okay.
their workforce, their leadership.
Yeah.
But again, it's ongoing, right?
Right. It's a journey.
Constant effort, self-reflection.
For sure. I think, building a truly equitable and inclusive, company and society,
Takes time.
it's a journey.
And it's constant work.
It is. Yeah, it doesn't stop. And it's definitely not a destination. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
We had
We've seen how they went from this one storefront
to a global giant.
to global giant. Yeah, I mean,
Amazing.
navigating cultural differences.
Innovating, sometimes
Sometimes not.
with mixed results.
With missed results, yeah.
And grappling with some serious controversies
For sure.
along the way.
Yeah, but in the midst of all of this,
Right.
they've also tried to kind of position themselves as a company that, cares about ethical sourcing, social impact.
Right, exactly. They've made efforts to address these things,
Yeah, like
through their CAFE practices, which stands for Coffee and Farmer Equity.
oh, the CAFE practices. Can you remind us, how does that program work?
Right, so the CAFE practices, it aims to make sure that their coffee is, sourced ethically,
Okay.
sustainably.
Okay. How exactly does that work, though?
So it's like a rating system, right?
Right.
Evaluates farms on things like, economic accountability,
Oh, yeah.
social responsibility, environmental leadership.
Gotcha.
Farmers who meet these standards, they can earn higher prices for their beans, which in theory incentivizes, good practices, and it ensures a fairer deal, for everyone involved.
Right. So it sounds like a step in the right direction, but is it enough?
Yeah.
you know?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, there's always that tension between, doing good
Right.
and the bottom line.
Exactly.
And critics say that the CAFE practices, the standards they're not rigorous enough
Okay.
to really tackle those deeper issues, like poverty,
Or-
exploitation in those coffee growing communities.
Makes sense.
So it really raises questions about how much impact are these programs really having
Right.
versus, how much of it is just savvy marketing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So it's complicated.
It is complicated.
Yeah.
And we can't forget their decision in 2022 to stop certifying their coffee as fair trade.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
That was a big deal.
It sparked a debate, for sure.
Huge debate.
Because they claimed that their CAFE practices were just, more effective.
Okay.
But some people saw it as a way to,
Bypass.
bypass exactly those stricter standards,
Right.
the independent auditing that comes with fair trade.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, again, it always comes back to transparency, right?
Right.
Accountability. How do we really know
Yeah. How do we know?
it's happening?
Exactly. It can be so overwhelming, even as a consumer, trying to make those ethical choices,
It is. It is really tough.
especially with a company as, large and complex as Starbucks.
Global supply chains? Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
But to be fair, they have been involved in, other social impact initiatives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just about the coffee sourcing.
Yeah. What else have they done?
So, since 2010, they've been donating unsold pastries.
Okay.
And by 2016, they committed to donating 100% of unsold food from their company-operated U.S. stores.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Through their food share program, it's provided millions of meals to food banks across the country.
That's amazing. I mean, that's,
A lot of food.
yeah, that's incredible. It's good to hear about, those concrete actions
Right.
that they're taking.
Yeah, it's not just talk,
Right. Exactly.
They're doing things.
Yeah. And what about their commitment to using cage-free eggs? That was another big one a few years back, right?
Oh, yeah. In 2008, they pledged to transition to 100% cage-free eggs by 2020.
Okay, achieved it
Wow.
for their company-operated stores,
Okay.
but it hasn't been fully implemented across all the licensed stores yet.
Right, yeah.
But it just shows how, even with good intentions,
It's hard.
it's really hard
Yeah.
to, create a sustainable, ethical,
When you're that big.
especially with a global supply chain.
Right. It makes you appreciate the sheer scale of what we're even talking about, right?
It is massive.
I mean, thousands of stores, countless suppliers, millions of customers. It's just, I mean, Starbucks has kind of become this like microcosm, you know what I mean?
It really
Of a
is.
globalization
It's like a symbol.
and consumerism.
Yeah, with all the good and the bad.
With all the good and the bad, exactly.
The contradiction.
It's the contradictions, right? And at the heart of it, it's like, can a company like Starbucks, with all its size and influence, can it truly be a force for good?
That's the question, right? I mean, they've certainly been trying to, adapt and innovate and, address their critics.
They want to be seen as, being responsible.
Yeah. They appointed a new CEO,
Yeah, they did.
Laxman Narasimhan, in 2023, so pretty recently.
Very recently.
He's taken, it seems like, a more hands-on approach.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Even working as a barista to really, understand the business from the ground up.
That's great.
So it's kind of too early to say, what his, tenure is going to bring.
Too early to tell.
But it's clear that they're trying to navigate
Changing world.
a rapidly changing world, yeah.
Where customers have high expectations, right? People care about social issues, environmental issues, and they vote with their wallets.
Yeah, for sure.
So Starbucks' future really depends on their ability to not just, respond to these concerns, but to actually, lead the way.
Lead the way, yeah.
In ethical and sustainable practices.
Right, so I guess after this deep dive, what's the takeaway?
I think it's that Starbucks' story, it's really a reflection of our own choices, our values.
That's a good point.
Every cup of coffee represents, it's a whole network of people and processes and, impacts on the planet.
Right.
So I think it's a reminder to just be informed, to ask questions.
Yes.
What does your coffee choice say about you?
It's a lot to ponder.
It is.
We've covered so much ground today, from, the aroma of those early Pike Place market days to, the global complexities of everything we just talked about.
Right. From a single shop to, this global phenomenon.
I know. It's amazing how far they've come.
It is. It's really a fascinating story.
It really is. And, I think it's a good reminder that even the simplest act, right, like enjoying a cup of coffee, it's connected to this much, much larger story.
Everything's connected.
Everything's connected.
Right.
And it's still being written.
Right. That's the exciting part. We get to see what happens next.
Exactly. And what choices will Starbucks make?
And what choices will we make?
And what choices will we make? That's a great point.
Right.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time for another journey into the fascinating stories behind the brands and the ideas that shape our world.